Bayou Bean Production.
What is up, Dutchers? So, this is a video of a recent run I had with the Duchy that I thought showcased some pretty important things. So, I'm just going to give some voiceover as the run kind of plays in the background when there are important things. I'll try to point them out. As you can see at the top of the video, I always like to scout my maps just to know the viability of a river build from the get-go. Because it doesn't matter if you get offered Fluvial Guard if you never find any rivers along the way. Obviously, you're not going to be able to capitalize on that. So, there's not really too much to say here. It's standard open. I see the long piece coming. I see that square, so I'm trying to get a 4 clear while maximizing what my wood clearer can do. As I recall, this wasn't the most efficient route, but actually it looks like I'm going to be able to turn this into another 4 clear. And when you're playing on the really high difficulties, as difficult as it might be, going for the double 4 clear really sets you up advantageously just in terms of econ. So I always try really hard for that. But it's important to realize when you are not getting that. So these all are pretty bad. And because of the way that I had to greed out the double 4 line, I don't have the money to reroll. So you can see me picking up Sawmill, which means I'm going to have to go play towards the middle with the river there. These 3 choices are interesting. Land expansion, obviously very good, but early on, you aren't transforming too much. Canal, I really like because it's the only instance of deck fixing in the game, but that also is pretty hard commit to rivers, and at this point I only have the Sawmill. So clearing is just a natural pickup. It's going to give me wood for free essentially, and later on when I can afford to upgrade it, it's going to allow me to have plenty of plains to play around with. So one bad thing about this route was I didn't get offered a military building after the first battle, and then it immediately fed me into a university. So I'm playing a little bit behind the gun here, which is not the best, but you kind of take what you can, right? So I know that my health is going to have to become a resource, at least early on. And I'm just going to try and leverage that into at least some strong econ with this Sawmill. Maybe put me in a better position as I move towards the end of Act 1. So here is a pretty annoying situation, actually. I know that I want to get the most that I can out of this Sawmill because it has a minimum flow of 15. I know there's only a set amount of river tiles in the pack, as it were. So I have to connect every single river piece together if I want to get the wood out of this Sawmill. I'm in this sticky situation. You can see the upcoming pieces. Like, I really, really need to connect this river. And I'm realizing I'm going to have to forego this double field row in order to make that happen, which just absolutely sucks. And not only that, I am not going to get as much value out of this watchtower as I would like. So this is just a difficult situation to be in. But sometimes you just kind of press water from stone. That T piece is nice. The watchtower has a range of 2, so it kind of covers the perfect amount there. And there we go. I get the last river piece, which allows my sawmill to go off. But now we have the 1 watchtower. The fortified farm has 10. But yeah, we're going to be using our health as a resource for a bit here, which sucks to have to do so early on, but sometimes that's just how it goes. Here's an interesting choice. Obviously, commandery is incredible, but to be able to do that, I would need to have a setup with faith. Commandery on the Duchy, I generally only pick up Act 2 and onwards, because by then I know whether or not I'm set up for faith. So instead I picked the second watchtower, knowing that I can lean really heavily into the fields. We sacrifice a little bit of our health to get that influx of wood. And then, knowing that there's a food depot, I decided to trade some wood for gold so that A, I can reroll, and B, I don't really have good gold generation right now. So I can get this watchtower to level 2, get the wood clear to level 3. We dropped the sawmill, obviously, because there are no river tiles. And now we have 2 strong-ish military units. However, they're both arrows. So they get pretty easily punished by a sword-heavy enemy, like we are seeing here with the training camp and the mark camp both being swords. Now, obviously, you can do a little bit of manipulation in the battle to ensure that you get the outcome that you want. So that's, you'll see over the course of this run, I have to do that a lot just to make sure that I get out of these situations alive. So one thing with this enemy watchtower, I now have to ensure that the fields that I'm building up for my own watchtowers are not also going to be benefiting them. So it's annoying, but important. Unfortunately there, the L piece is going to give a little bit to their watchtower, but couldn't really be helped. And it gives more to our watchtower, so in the end it's worth it. But here's the situation I was talking about. Even though I picked up that fresh military unit, it is not great. So I'm just sending axes into swords, so then I can convert everything into arrows. And just like that, we are down to 17 health. So all that money that I picked up I really only needed 25 because of the reroll, but knowing that I was playing from a position of being behind meant that I wasn't going to be winning, which meant that I wasn't going to be bringing in extra coins at the end of the round. And here I just open the other 2 slots so I can bring in the prison and the sawmill. Just because A, I really need the prison, and B, as difficult as it is, when you are playing on these really high difficulties, you need to be able to push for resources, even when it feels really uncomfortable to do so. Like there, I had to forfeit 200 more wheat just to bring in this sawmill. So on the surface, that is a difficult pill to swallow, but knowing that the sawmill can net me much more in the long run, even if I just play it for 1 or 2 more rounds, I really need that wood because I really need my fortified farm to get going. And it can't all just be on my wood clearer, at least not in the beginning. So here I'm just trying to build up a nice kind of square of plains around my watchtowers. What's tricky here is because this is Nightmare, that 33 is going to be larger than my prison allows. So I cannot play my prison as clean as it would have been to slide it in there. I cannot. So I have to kind of forego those lines, pick up the sawmill value, and ensure that my prison was away. Thankfully, this time around, they actually have axes. And that makes all the difference. We do the chip damage, combine, throw them into the arrows. And we're starting on that slow, painful journey known as the comeback trail. So here, again, we're going to use all of that gold that I picked up earlier to re-roll. Watermill is a consideration, but I don't have Fluvial Guard or River Castle, so I'm not committing rivers at all. Unfortunately, didn't really see any additional military, but we do get terraformers, which is incredible. When you lose your exploration bonuses by going up in level, the value that you get from things like clearing and terraformers becomes even more impactful. So I go here, I heal up, and we're headed into the wall. So importantly here, I don't want to play this sawmill. I want to get a merc camp. And I'm 50 gold short, so I sell the sawmill, which frees me up to pay for the other merc camp. I know that I do not currently have the gas to take on the wall and these 4 units. But now with the merc camp, I have 4 units. I guess 5 if you count the fortified farm. So realistically, if you have 4 worthwhile units, or even like half decent units, you can generally beat the wall, because you need to be able to beat their 4 garrisons and then effectively kind of just take a punch to the face. It sucks, but again, health is a really important resource in this game. You need to be able to know when it's okay to sacrifice health. I'll come back to that in a second, but here is actually a really annoying situation. I see the rally point followed by the strategic pavilion, and I know I want to be throwing this rally point over on the left to kind of keep it out of the way. But that means that the strategic pavilion is going to end up where I do not want it, which is with maximum surface area, 7 open slots. But thankfully, the wood clearer and that box of wood are able to kind of clear that situation up pretty tidily. So now I just have this one remaining kind of lip to deal with. And sure enough, I can close that up. Get one more plains. I see the wooden fortress coming in, so I'm just going to tuck it away over here in the buildings. Kind of set it and forget it. 2 Z pieces, one in the reserve, one river. Both kind of annoying, but again, I'm just trying to maximize what I can here to make sure that I'm not giving them any bonuses, because I cannot afford for them to get stronger. And here I did something sneaky. As easy as it would have been to put that prison beforehand, I knew that if I could get that field piece in before my prison, then by nature of placing the prison, I turned 2 of those fields, or 2 of those plains into fields rather, and just eke out a little more for that watchtower. And here I'm just kind of doing the math, trying to figure out how I want to kind of slice and dice the enemy. My swords will take out the first batch of arrows, do chip damage to the next, and then I can combine it all up to axes to throw into my arrows. And there we go. I was able to beat the 4 units, take another punch to the face, and we get the blacksmith. And if you've watched my guide, you know how I feel about blacksmith. It's the best unit in this game. Obviously, the Duchy isn't as good utilizing it as the other 2 by nature of the belfry and crazy barracks or commandery things, but it's still a unit that can copy power from multiple sources. Here I'm trying to decide between exploited lands and windmill. Generally, I really like exploited lands, but because I'm going to be creating enormous fields, because a key component of this run currently is my 2 watchtowers, I actually opt for the windmill. Now, I have the money, so I'm just going to go ahead and open that 7th slot, upgrade this windmill, and continue to press on. And again, you're seeing why it's so important to really secure that econ. Now, I know that their army primarily concerns itself with being adjacent to plains. Oh, this is so annoying. This is one of the few L turns that you cannot make in this game. So you're gonna watch me get very frustrated with this for a bit before finally deciding screw it. Like, I don't need this row this bad. Even when you're rotating like this, sometimes these L pieces just do not feel like falling down, no matter how much practice you put into it. So anyways, back to my other point. I know that the enemy primarily cares about plains, so in my mind, I'm going to attempt to put non-planes over on the left and my planes over on the right. Here I'm finally... Oh, I thought I was finally resigning my... Yeah, there it is. Finally resigned myself to the inefficiency of not being able to clear that row. But you just gotta do it sometimes. Here I could put that wood clearer down in the corner, but I really, really do not want to. I need to get as much wood out of this unit as possible. I also need to make sure that I'm not clearing too many planes for the enemy. So that's why I positioned it where I did, so that it would not benefit that watchtower or that rally point. So in my deck, I know there's a blacksmith, and currently it is best utilized on one of my watchtowers. Here's another annoying rotation that just won't happen. Anyways, so I know that I need to be able to get my blacksmith adjacent to one of my towers. And right now, looking at 3 plus 11, 14 pieces. Well, now I see the blacksmith. But before I had that information, I knew that I had a second watchtower coming up. So I was building in such a way that I would allow myself to effectively ensure that my blacksmith was always going to be next to this watchtower here. And here I'm just trying to decide between maximum field, and I decided to push it over to the right, even though I had an equal amount over on the left. It's just I had that enemy watchtower, and I didn't want to be feeding the enemy watchtower with any of my building to ensure that my own watchtower became powerful. And now with the blacksmith, we have a decent amount of swords, which is always nice. Which means that we can go swords into their arrows, come back, scoop up all of our arrows into their axes, and it's nice and clean. Hunting lodge. No, of course not. So yeah, here I pick up training camp. My thought process there was training camp is really good when you have a specific build type that wants to be clustered together. And I know that I always want a blacksmith on a watchtower. I always want the watchtower to be somewhat near my fortified farm because I want the fields. So picking up the training camp just kind of leans into what I'm naturally doing already. So I'll just kind of have to keep that in mind. But it's actually much easier in this style of build than you would think. Here I'm trying to decide between kindling and heavy plow or lucky finds. Kindling I'm not too hot on, and I have the clearing. So I opt for the lucky finds there as opposed to the heavy plow because I just know I already kind of innately have a lot of food coming in, so I don't necessarily need more food. I would much rather be able to double up on the occasional stone or forest or plains and food. Um, so it's kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen when it comes to the fields, but the additional bonus for wood and stone is kind of where my mind was at with that choice. Here, I'm just trying to minimize what the enemy's stables are capable of. So, by placing them next to each other, I know that they are not going to grow. I also see my training camp, my wood clear, and my watchtower. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my training camp right here in the middle and use that as my build around. So from here on out, while I use the training camp, you'll see me do this. I will kind of pick a lane or a column, if you will, and follow that column to ensure that I get the most out of my training camp. So right now my training camp is providing 24. It's about to provide 36. If I recall, I think I made a little oopsie here, which was I had been remembering that I did not want my prison to also be touching the blacksmith. And let's see if I make the error anyways. Oh no, it looks like I don't. So I'm making sure that I place this in such a way that it clips the training camp, get even more value. Now I'm kind of left with this awkward scenario where I see that stone fortress coming up. I know that I can avoid the right side with the stone, so I'm just gonna go for that. It's going to mean that I miss out on some clears, but honestly, that's fine. At this point, I don't need to play too greedy. I see the LPs coming up, so that's why I position the T like that. This watchtower, unfortunately, is not going to get too much, just by nature of when it was drawn and the tiles that I drew around it. But that's just kind of how things go sometimes. You have to be flexible with where you position things. Like I drew all of my planes very early and one of my watchtowers very late. Kind of naturally happens. Here I'm just avoiding putting any stone on that fortress. And unfortunately the pieces don't really line up in a way where I'm going to be able to get another clear. But I have the blacksmith next to my watchtower, so I'm doubling that output. And my training camp actually did a great job. It effectively gave 48 this fight, 12 for all 4 of those buildings. So, like I said, when you have a build like this where you are going to tightly cluster anyways, training camp is incredible. And this is a level 1 training camp that just gave me 48 units. So here I'm just trying to work out the math. I figure I can do chip damage to the swords, turn them into axes, use the axes to pick up the other swords. And this is one of the sketchier fights that we've done, but able to pull it out with using that chip damage and combination trick that you've seen me do a couple times here, where you always try to be fighting at an advantage. Even if you know you're going to lose, fight at the advantage, then take those units, combine them into something else. So here I finally have enough resources, and importantly, I have unlocked all 8 slots. So I'm pulling the trigger on that watchtower because I really, really want to be able to copy the power and the output of this level 3 watchtower with my blacksmith. And thankfully, I drew my blacksmith very early. So here, kind of like what I was talking about last game, or last round rather, I know that I'm going to want to use my training camp. So I'm just going to build myself a little column of buildings to ensure I get the most value that I can out of this training camp. And actually, this might be the round that I was thinking of where I made the oopsie. And thankfully, I was not punished for this. So I put my prison also adjacent to the blacksmith, which meant that potentially the blacksmith could have just copied the output of the prison instead of the output of the watchtower, which, as you'll see, would have been very, very bad for me, considering how large this watchtower gets. It's level 3 now, so it has range 3, which is incredible. It's going to play really nicely with my fortified farm and with my wood clearer. So I'm just trying to optimize for that. Again, I draw another late watchtower, but that's just kind of how it goes. At least it was my level 2 watchtower, so I don't have to worry about that too much. Gonna have a gap in here, and that's okay. But I unwittingly gave that supply line a little more oomph, which is unfortunate, but I was able to get that triple row clear. And at this point, I was feeling pretty secure in the fight. So I figured I could give them 2 pieces of terrain in order to get the resources from the clear down below. Here, I'm just kind of doing the math. You'll see me do my trick again. So chip damage with the axes. I know there's going to be small remainder of swords. I can turn all of those units into axes, drive them into my arrows, then send the remainder into the arrows and drive those into my swords. Being able to manipulate the enemy's units like that is such an important aspect of this game. So here I'm faced with 2 choices, militia and supply logistics. Both are very good. I decided because for the time being, I generally am not really placing the production buildings right next to the military buildings. I decided to instead go for the supply logistics, just kind of leaning into the heavy field strategy. Here I'm trying to decide between what upgrades I effectively want. Either the prison or the garrison. Upgrading the prison effectively gives me an extra 15. Upgrading the training camp allows me to send 15 per, so it's an extra 3. So it would have to hit 5 buildings to be the same efficacy of upgrading my prison. So I opt for the prison, knowing that on this fight it's going to be pretty difficult for my training camp to hit 5 things, because we can't really make that nice little tower. Here I made an oopsie. I totally forgot that I had clearing. I have this nice large forest coming in that is going to turn into a nice large plains for me. Unfortunately, I had forgotten that while I was in this fight. So I placed my T-piece like that. But it is what it is, and we keep going. So in order to beat the wall, I know that I need to get to at least 241 units, which means I really need to make sure that my level 3 watchtower is as strong as it possibly can be, and that my blacksmith copies the level 3 watchtower. So I'll just kind of talk about my build strategy here, kind of as we're going. I know that I need my plains to hit the watchtower, so I'm going to place the fortified farm. If you watch my guide about this boss, I always like to be thinking in advance about where each of my buildings are going to go. So I know that I'm going to want my watchtower, my blacksmith, all to be in the middle. Currently, I had been thinking that I could put my training camp on the wings here. But I was forgetting that it only effectively goes for that single row. It's not a double row building. So that means that it's actually going to get very, very minimal value over this entire fight. And here we see the blacksmith coming in, which is part of the game plan. So I just need to come up with a place to put these other tiles to make sure that my blacksmith lands right on top of that watchtower. Because this Z piece that I'm currently holding on to will be perfect for converting into fields and protecting the blacksmith from being interfered with. So now I'm feeling pretty comfortable. I have that 78 watchtower that's going to get copied, so I know I already have 150, and I just need to come up with 100 more from my other units to be able to beat the keep. But you'll see here, I don't really have a great place to place this training camp. If I put it, and actually you'll probably see me do the math on this pretty soon here. If I put it on the wings, it will, like that, and I trip the alarm, it will net me 24, but it gives the defense tower 25. So it's not worth it. That is a net loss of 1. And unfortunately, the blacksmith is, it says unique, but it has a production type sub tag, which means that it's not going to get hit by the training camp, unfortunately. So I just opt to put it over there on the left side, convert a few more planes, hit that one prison. But yeah, as you can see, the my decision earlier to upgrade my prison over my training camp is really coming in handy here, because the training camp got very minimal value throughout this fight, whereas the prison is going to get its full value. And here I'm just kind of playing with my food there. So 80 in total off that watchtower. So that's 160 from my combo. I pick up the remainder. And then use health as a resource again. But when you're playing on this high of difficulty, sometimes you just got to be able to do that. Take your licks, because the only HP that really matters is your last HP. You can heal up at the ports and the villages, so keeping that in mind is important. Here we drop mountains. The build that I have doesn't really need too much stone, so knowing that, I would much rather keep the steady income of wood, keep my clearing doing work, keeping my wood clearer doing work. So it was a pretty easy drop for me. Here I picked up the Bastion and the Roadhouse. Both of those are essentially just being held as 50 gold on demand. Importantly, the enemy has 2 prisons, which have a huge garrison. However, if I can ensure that they are next to my level 3 watchtower, and that my level 3 watchtower gets to at least, I think it was 45 power, then I can negate all of their garrison. This is also the one of the crazier fights in Act 3. Sometimes it'll be siege camps and prison camps. Sometimes, if you're with rivers, it'll be with fluvial guards. But for the most part, Act 3 fights are generally around 300 garrison. This one and the fluvial guard variation of it are both 450 garrison, which is crazy. But it's because, I mean, the fluvial guard one is ridiculous. It's fluvial guards and raider colonies. But unlike prisons, raider colonies can't just be swept away. So here, I get the fields, take out 200 garrison, and feeling pretty good. I still have 250 axes to deal with, but I have my arrows, so I know that I can always just combine up everything into just arrows to take out their axes. So here, because of the way I've had to position with the enemy prisons, I'm having to kind of pivot a little bit from my natural build that I do with the training camp, but that's okay. I can still hit both of these watchtowers and this prison. I see my windmill coming up, so I know that I want to keep that open. And there we go. Then I just kind of clean up the board. Hopefully I clean up the board. I don't know what I'm thinking about so long here. Oh, maximizing the planes on my watchtower. That makes sense. Good job, past Bayou Bean. And there we go. That's the fight. Now I know I can just combine everything into arrows, take on the 250 axes, and it is nothing. Now, that fight would have been so much worse if they had an additional 200 swords. That would have been game losing. Here, none of these options are really what I'm looking for, so I go for the reroll. The level 2 Thieves Hideout I like. Primarily just for the boss fight coming up. If I can get that building to be around even just 4 other buildings, that'll put it at 60, which is already better than my level 2 barracks. Or prison, rather. And here I'm just going for some upgrades here and there before I decide on my route. I was just doing a counting of the stone that I was going to need to finish out the run. And I saw that my prison and my blacksmith were going to need stone. Here, tactical advantage can be very powerful for certain builds, but I have a little bit of everything, so it really just does not do too much for me. Here I'm trying to decide if I want the training camp or the Thieves Hideout. And seeing their buildings, that they were Alarm Tower and Thieves Hideouts, I decide that it's not yet time for the Thieves Hideout, because I really want to be able to place my own Thieves Hideout in a position where it is near all of their buildings and all of my buildings. But all of their buildings, I want to stay the hell away from. So, pretty easy decision to go for the training camp as opposed to the Thieves Hideout here. Again, you're seeing me do what you've already seen several times, which is building with my training camp in mind. Making that nice line down the center. This training camp is going to come in and get 36 plus whatever else. And by nature of it being next to the fortified farm, it's going to get a bonus now that I have the militia tech card. So I'm currently trying to ensure that I can get my blacksmith next to just the watchtower, plus whatever other building, because at this point it is level 2, so it'll copy 2 things. So that's why I finally pulled the trigger on putting the training camp down first, because I did not want to be in a position where I had that watchtower down and then I was just kind of locked in. Oh, and this is going to get ugly real quick, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast here. I'm still not seeing my blacksmith, which means I can't commit too hard. But eventually I decide, you know what? I need to get this down. I can get the benefits of militia from the placement of it next to the windmill, even though that's tripping the alarm tower down there. And then realizing that my only... my blacksmith is only copying the watchtower, I figured I might as well put the wood clearer on top. Even though it only cleared 3 tiles of wood, that's still better than nothing. It was an extra 24 wood. And when you're playing on extreme, sometimes you need to eke out every little bit of resources. So this is a pretty scary fight here, but thankfully I have a large amount to counter their biggest force. So my arrows can take out their axes, but right now I'm trying to figure out the best way to deal with these 150 swords. So I know that I can do chip damage with the axes, and then I'll throw all of my swords into their swords, and then I can convert them all into arrows and walk away unscathed. So that's exactly what we do. Here, I actually love seeing this level 2 supply line. Supply line on the final boss, even on the second boss, is incredible. I don't run them all the time. The thieves hide out in the supply line. But for specifically fighting the bosses, they are so good. So, I finally have the food. I upgrade my prison, upgrade my terraformers, and that is it. But now we got the level 3 prison, which is perfect. It's just a fat stack of swords without having to do too much work. Here, I am just thinking about where I want their siege camp to be. So I'm just kind of building in a way where I can hook their siege camp kind of down near the bottom without having to sweat it too much, while still maintaining this very large field. In the event that I draw one of my watchtowers soon, they will fit very comfortably in there. So I see my blacksmith coming up, and at this point I have not seen any of my watchtowers, so I have to be really careful of my placement, which means I commit on the prison into the training camp line. I see a watchtower, but it is unfortunately my level 2 watchtower, so I can't full commit on the blacksmith just yet. We throw their training camp over to the right to avoid their siege camp, and now I'm just trying to think about if there's a way for me to commit this level 2 watchtower and have it hit a training camp in such a way that I could get full value out of the double copy of the blacksmith. But one thing I didn't really take into consideration is that instead of copying that watchtower, because there's not really too much going on over there, I could have very easily had it copy the prison in my level 3 watchtower, which I think would have been the smarter play, because I only had this one plains coming, which means that level 2 watchtower, like that thing is small potatoes. It does not matter right now. So that is a misplay, but level 2 blacksmith is incredible. It can make up for all my shortcomings. So here I'm going to do my chip damage, combine up, throw into arrows, turn into swords, kill their arrows. So the math was a little bit off by the end there. They had 10 axes remaining, but that was small enough that my massive arrows could take it. The land expansion is actually really nice at this point because I have supply logistics, and if I and garden. So anytime I place a building, I am going to then convert nearby plains into fields. And if I can do it in such a way that the building is now touching 3, it's just extra garrison. Here, you just saw me. I upgraded my supply line to level 3. This is the final boss fight. I know that I need to bring as much heat as possible. Looking at it now, I think that I took out my windmill, but I can't remember. Oh, no. See, that's another misplay there. Oh no. I think I kept the windmill in to help pay the bribes. But between the clearing and the terraformers, I think that was a misplay. I think realistically what I should have done was bring the second watchtower, even though it effectively was not doing that well. I think I should have still brought that instead of the windmill. And here I'm just trying to build in such a way that I can maximize there. I mean, yeah, you just saw what terraformers can do. So I'm fine. I paid off the bribe. I have 9 more turns to do it again. I know that I have this clearing proc, and I have the wood clearers still to play, plus any line clears that I get. So I'm pretty confident that I am not going to have to deal with the enemy getting additional units. So here, that watchtower is getting huge. Actually, that windmill really didn't end up doing much. So, I now more than ever, I know that was a mistake to bring it in. Here's a funny, a funny interaction on this boss. If you bring in the supply line or the thieves' hideout, and it costs you resources, it will make your bribery a negative amount. But at this point, I had paid into the bribe enough that I have 27 turns until the dungeon will recruit. So I'm not worried about it in the slightest. Here we finally see my blacksmith coming up. Dreams do come true. I've been waiting. I've been holding. We just slot that in. I'm trying to think about where I want this thieves hideout. It's not really gonna get too much value, but eventually I'm just gonna have to commit. Here I'm feeding a few more tiles to my supply line. I get my prison on top of the blacksmith, and then position the thieves hideout in such a way that it will at least proc off 2 buildings, which is not great, but if the goal is 375, then I know that I'm pretty much there with just my combo. I'm at 144 times 2. So I just need to come up with a little bit more to win. And I have the 70 from the supply line coming in. So at this point, I'm just kind of playing with my food. I've effectively beaten the dungeon, but sometimes it's fun to just kind of mess around and place tiles however you feel like, knowing that there are no repercussions. But we get the blacksmith, it procs, you add it all together, and voila. Just like that. That is the Duchy on the hardest difficulty with 0 restarts. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.